Hi there, I'm Rob Guttroy, Principal Consultant with Armoured Consulting, and welcome back to our series of industry conversations. In our role as independent consultants to the civilian armoured vehicle industry, one of our primary goals is to provide up-to-date information that is of a high technical content for members of the industry, particularly for procurement agencies, fleet managers, and users. Today we continue our series by bringing you a conversation I recently had with Henrik Schepler. Henrik is the Managing Director of CAV Friederichs, a 185-year-old uparmouring and vehicle modification company based in Frankfurt, Germany. In this conversation, Henrik spoke about the history of the company going back to 1840 and the rebuilding of the company after 1945. We spoke of the challenges of manufacturing and through-life support for civilian armoured vehicles, the importance of customer collaboration, and the various materials used in the production of vehicles. We also spoke that electric vehicles will bring their own set of challenges in the years ahead. Finally, we also discussed the independent testing and certification of vehicles, and particularly the issues as they relate to using different transparent glass suppliers, and also when these suppliers then change their manufacturing processes. I hope you enjoy this wide-ranging conversation as much as I had in recording it. And please don't forget to hit the subscribe button below to keep up to date with all the new interviews and the other videos that we post to our YouTube channel. So it's enough of me. Please welcome Mr. Henrik Schepler. All right, good morning and welcome to Henrik Schepler from CAV Friederichs, a armoured vehicle manufacturer based in Frankfurt, I believe.
Yes, correct. Good morning, Rob. Thank you for the invitation and happy to talk to you. Sometimes we meet at your at the IDEX exhibition and the Commercial Armored Vehicle Forum. I'm happy to join you with the talking. Here correctly. We are here based in Frankfurt am Main, in the heart of Germany. Normally, typical as a city for banks and insurance companies, but even more than 185 years.
Yes.
Friedrichs established here in Frankfurt. This company was founded 1814 in the middle of the city. So we have, without celebration, 185 years of history. Of course, 185 years ago, there were no automobiles. Transporting and of goods and passengers were with horse coaches, carriages. And this was the beginning of the company. Mr. Carl Friedrichs, who founded the company, he was traveling, before he founded the company in Frankfurt, traveling around to Europe. I think even he learned a lot in the UK during his travels about horse coaches and carriages. And then over some decades, always was given the company from father to son. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, with our with our modern times, I guess, didn't they have daughters? But maybe in this situation, there was always giving to the sons. I don't know. And the last family owner was Mr. Heinz Friedrichs. He took over the company in the middle of 1960s. The company even survived two world wars, but was totally destroyed in the end of the 1945. And that's why we do not have a lot of historic materials. This was all destroyed. But we have a good start again in the 50s and 60s. And then outside, in the outskirts of Frankfurt, on farmland, he built our company, the bigger one, our main company. Since the 60s, of course, we are now lot of industry areas around us, surrounding us. But Mr. Friedrichs, he grew the company to a bigger one and even to a more international one. Even in the 60s and 70s, Friedrichs started with armored vehicles. This was the first.
So I'm going to jump in because it's amazing, the history. To have a company that is 185 years old and still going is very rare along the way. I have to say, based in Frankfurt, which is insurance companies and banks, it's security. So it actually is a nice tie-up of producing security vehicles, protection
Yes.
vehicles,
Even,
in a town that is that. So
yeah.
if I can ask, given the history going back from, horse and carriage, and then automobiles, and certainly the devastation after the war, as we would call World War II.
Yeah.
In the 70s, you said that there was the starting to get into civilian armoured vehicles.
Correct. Yes.
So I suppose two questions. Why was it that the company decided to go into armed vehicles? Because we'll talk more also about your other product range, because you do a number of other vehicle modifications, not just armoured vehicles, and whether or not also you were involved, the company's involved with military style vehicles or only civilian vehicles.
Normally civilian, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but to answer the question, of course, you're right. In the end of 60s started that more and more robberies happens with taxi drivers. So the German government started a law that between the taxi driver and the passengers should be a protected partition wall to the passenger. This was the start. And of course, this was not bulletproof at the beginning. But then the robbery started even on cash and transits in the same times, late 60s, early 70s. So even there was a law that the cash and transits have to be protected, as they are still in the moment in the same level of protection. And even then the bank robberies even started in buildings. So even sometimes we supplied protected bank halls or whatever, but the main focus was always in the vehicles.
I understand. Okay, very interesting. All right. So given that past, how have you seen the development of civilian armoured vehicles? And I know that my own history, I've been involved for 27 years, 25 years now. And if I go back to the late 90s, early 2000s, it was very basic, just some basic glass, basic armour plates bolted to the inside of a door, and people said, voila, here is an armoured vehicle. But it's obviously changed the way. So how have you seen with your company and the vehicles you've been producing, how they've developed over the years?
Yes. Good question. Thank you. Even because of my personal experience in August, I have in my personal situation 45 years in the car body building business. I started with 16 in a car body shop in Austria. I was for 5 years a foreigner as a German and Austrian. And unfortunately, I was a little bit lazy. I think typical the boy's age. It was 16. Yeah. And my father decided I have to learn how work will be. So he put me into a workshop. And I have still a very good contact to my former boss. He just celebrated his 80th birthday last year. And sometimes visited him in Austria. But the first years I learned how to repair cars more or less. But then when we moved to Germany in 1982, I started at a company, Berger in Frankfurt, and I learned how to armor vehicles because they already armored cash and transit vehicles, of course, in a very low protection level. Unfortunately, it's still the same, more or less, for the standard armored vehicles for cash and transit. But in this 43 years experience with armored vehicles, of course, there were always somebody has some new ideas, new materials, some new ideas how to operate cash and transit. That's why everything started was cash and transit transport for here. Yeah. And even, for example, the normal cash and transit vehicle, they carry 2 to 3 security personnel inside, and one stays in the car and 2 maybe go together out to collect the money. But the human factor is the most expensive. Even 35 years ago was the same. So some smart cash and transit companies had the idea to put only one person in the cash and transit, make it lighter, smaller cars, lighter, special armored materials, and put a safe into the cash and transit vehicle that the client has to go out of the building and put the money inside.
Yeah.
This worked only 1 year.
Interesting.
This was only 1 year. Even used a lot of special armor material, not anymore steel, because the cross vehicle weight was only reduced to 2.8 tons. though we used Dyneema and another artificial material and thinner glass and whatever, because we had only to protect one person in the driver cabin. But the risk for robberies was then on the employees of the shops when they put the money into the cars. Right. And there were so many robberies then, and then there was forbidden this kind of system. But only in the other years, of course, we tried even a lot of with ceramic materials and kind of other steel solutions. And but honestly, I'm still a armored steel fan. Because even my experience, I faced a lot of problems with newer materials, not only in price, even in how to install it in the vehicles. So the progress in very good materials, especially in the armored glass and the steel from the certain manufacturers got better and better. So I'm still a steel fan, and 99% of our vehicles, they are most based on steel solutions, inside, outside, and of course, special glass solutions.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting you say that, because we know that one of the issues that we talk with our clients about, and I'm sure you do with yours as well, is where the vehicle is going to be operating and what is the threat that is predominantly in that area, and therefore what is the capability, the protection that is required for the vehicle, so that if more ballistic threat, and to some extent cash in transit is typically more ballistic. Well, maybe not actually, come to think of it.
Not anymore.
Not anymore, exactly right. But certainly on the sedan side, the typical SUVs that we see, the Land Cruisers or the sedans for high value clientele, then if it's more ballistic, then the type of steel that you can use is one type where the hardness can be a little bit higher, and therefore it is less flexible, so to speak, less malleable, and so it can be thinner and it can be lighter. But if you're in a blast situation where there needs to be a bit of flexibility, malleability, so to speak, of the steel, then the higher the hardness, the more brittle it becomes, and it's more susceptible for cracking and breaking during a blast.
This is our daily challenge. And I think same for our competitors, of course, the same. But for example, when I get informations, there was another thing. We started armoring even SUVs, for example. The typical SUV in Germany was a Mercedes-Benz G-Wagon.
Yes.
The base vehicle, this was the first where we started. And then for other markets at the beginning, it was not the Toyota Land Cruiser. It's a moment is number one for everybody. But then we used, for example, Ford Explorer and Mitsubishis and Nissans, Patrols. There were plenty cars that we are armored. But all starting from the cash and transit, then more civilian protection. And this correct material is, we have to choose upon the risk the client fears or might fears in the areas where we use the vehicles. Of course, Western Europe is another threat, even for weather situations, the temperatures, than in Far or Middle East, or Africa, for example. And a very long time ago, we had already a business with the Middle East, the Near East, and even Africa. And then we faced, especially with kind of aramid fabrics, we tried, of course, at the beginning for protection solutions, but we faced that even the human factor again, because the steel in the former times we weld cut it, then we cut it plasma, then we cut it laser, and now we cut it with water. But in all the years, some years ago, the fabrics we have to cut by saw. We have to cut it, and then of course the sealing of the cuts, where you cut the material. If it's not 100% properly, you might face huge problems later, but nobody will find out, because you glue the plates into the car if it's a car like SUV or a panel van, and because of humidity or fluids that can involve to the material will grow, or not the real English word for it, because humidity comes. How do you call it in English, please? Yes, sorry.
Well,
Thank you.
the
Yes.
moisture.
Yeah, and then you have lost the safety solution or the protection. Yeah. And even if it's not properly glued, and for the gluing properly, you need it properly cleaning. So a lot of factors involved. This makes it even more expensive and sometimes unsafe, from my opinion. And for the steel solution, if it's properly cut and welded, of course, there's so many things we have to recognize and to be careful. But this will last for years. Yeah, and even for temperature differences between minus 30 or a plus 50 with the steel solution, for my opinion, you're always on the better side. And then to answer your question finally with the blast, of course, the threads changed from just bullet protection to blast protection, even maybe 10, 15 years ago, sometimes more earlier. It depends on the area where the vehicles were used with IEDs, whatever in the Middle East. And then even in Germany, we had some famous bombs on bankers here a very long time ago. And from this experience, we have to protection for both threat levels and to find always a compromise between the one and the other and keep the vehicle as light as possible in the same. But even, for example, at the moment, we use a lot of armor steel in 650 hardness. This was 25 years unbelievable hard, but it's still flexible enough to hold up blast threats.
Indeed. So it's interesting you're saying, and I'd be happy to hear your thoughts of the key factors that you as an up-armourer take into account and how you balance protection and the materials that you have to use, the manufacturing process that you use with, as you say, you've gone into how you cut the steel, gone through laser water jet cutting, and the hardness of the steel, the Brunel rating, the thickness of the steel, and then balancing that again against the comfort for the passengers. You can build a tank, terrific, but personally, I know, having worked in the Foreign Affairs Department, the government of Australia, I didn't find too many ambassadors, even the ones in Iraq or Afghanistan, who are willing to drive around in a tank. This is not what people want. So they need comfort, they need space, and they need the ability not only of the vehicle to protect the occupants, but to be able to maneuver and to drive in the different conditions, whether it's in a beautiful paved road, a freeway, or compacted road, semi-compacted, unmade roads. As you say, even in between the hot and the cold. And so interestingly, we did some work with the OSCE a number of years ago, between the two wars, unfortunately, or so. And in the east of the Ukraine, they were hindered. They were challenged considerably because the roads had not been maintained for 20, 30 years. The potholes were significant. And so the reaction of the vehicle driving fast, because they needed to for operational reasons, and the vehicle bouncing up and down through the potholes, and how the vehicles would react. So then you need to build the vehicle in a particular way that takes into account the protection, the maneuverability, the comfort level, and affordability. So, what are some of the key issues and challenges that you have as an up-armourer? How do you balance that for your clientele?
Yes, another of our daily challenges. But there's so many points you mentioned, they are all correct. Regarding, for example, the comfort, even I joined the German army only 15 months. I was at the, we call it Germany Panzergrenadier infantry. And we used the Marder, a small tank, as a armored personnel carrier. It was very, very, very uncomfortable. So a tank is something else, and we don't want to build tanks. But you're absolutely correct. The cars, our vehicles, should be as comfortable as possible, as safe as possible, and as safe to drive as possible. And that is the real challenge. For example, Some years ago, we developed a car, even certified with the German test houses. It was certified in Schrobenhausen, and our target was not to have too big overlappings, especially in the four side doors, to left and to right. And this was quite challenging. And we nearly succeeded with the first test, but our client this time, they had another special test they wanted to have certified. They want to have a 10-meter distance in the angle of 90 degrees to the roof. And this is normally unusual threat, even in certification. In certification, as you know, we tested from 30 degrees angle to 45. This is the standard test. But in 190 degrees to the roof, in the special areas, in the doors and the side panels, this was quite a challenge. That's why I would prefer to have the overlappings as small as possible due to comfort. Sometimes we do it, but even the technical design and the extremely, precise design of the door gaps and overlappings makes it more expensive. And not every customer or client is accepting this higherly costs as soon as it's a normal SUV. Yeah, not a high, very important passengers inside. So that's why we asked the customers, was more important the access, safe or the comfortable access to the inside the car or not, or more the price and value in balance. That's why we still have the overlappings. We need them, but I'm not a fan of the bigger ones or the really wide ones. But this is my special hobby because of my huge experience. There are sometimes cars on the road where the overlapping stops in some areas because the dashboard or something else. Yeah. And when I see this, I went, oh my God. Yeah. Then, that's why our cars are from our competitors, even the good ones, they're a little bit more expensive because you have to cut the dashboard, for example, or some other areas to modify it to have 100% safe door gap area. This is one. The next one, keep weight as low as possible for drivability, because even the unarmored cars, the standard cars, yeah, especially on heavy roads, as you mentioned, in some areas, yeah, bad roads, doesn't matter where, and even then slippery roads because of mud and snow and whatever, should be as light as possible. And even standard cars, they face already challenges with the bad street or road conditions. But armored cars are normally always more difficult to drive, more sensible of your driving skills. So as lighter as possible the car should be. And the next step to a certified protection for armoring or armor protection, blast and bullets is even that you get the car road legal. And I remember many years ago, you bought some new dampers, for example, and other spring bars from a kind of sports car, a little bit harder, other colors. Yeah, the client can see it's a yellow spring now, not a dark one or the black one. But then everybody found out very easily the cars are not working properly because of the heavy weight. Everybody adding in armored vehicles. So it's very important to get the car, even with armoring or with the protection, road legal. But this is the next very expensive and not easy challenge. But if you want, I can explain how we would do it.
Interesting what you're saying is that, and I think it's a very important point, that a number of users don't fully appreciate, whereby in their mind, the armoured vehicle is all about protection. And it certainly is. No one's disputing that. Having said that, protection against road vehicle collisions or rollovers due to the fact that the high centre of gravity means that a vehicle going around.
That was the word I was missing.
Oh, right. Okay. Yes. Okay. I was thinking balance, and we'll talk about that in a minute. There's a weight balance between the front and the rear of the vehicle, given that in many cases the engine bay area, including the engine management system, maybe in front of the radiator, certainly sometimes the battery
Even sometimes
are armoured. And so you've got additional weight, let alone the
even sometimes left and right.
Correct.
Because sometimes.
So now you've got a balance. So you've got a balance between front and rear, and also vertically because of the higher the centre of gravity again with an SUV.
Yes.
And so having users understand that there's a protection of the occupant by virtue of mobility, of road safety, and that is, as one can argue, it is as important as is the glass protection, given the fact that we know statistically more people are killed and injured, God forbid, from road vehicle incidences. They're not the accidents, unfortunately. Now, there's always a reasoning to it, as compared to being in a blast or a ballistic event. And that's just the statistics bear that out.
Absolutely.
And so you as an up armourer need to balance between, as you say, there's a comfort area, there's a blast and ballistic protection area, and there's the issue of the mobility. And all of that in an aspect of the lowest price possible. And of course, the user wants all of that. And they pay the lowest possible price. But we know to a greater extent, one can say, you get what you pay for. If you buy very low price, very poor quality suspension, there will be an impact on the mobility of the vehicle. That is just an engineering fact along the way. And so, again, you can have 2 millimeter armoured steel, and it's still armoured, but it's not going to protect against the like of the application VR7, let alone a VR9 along the way. All right. So, bearing all that in mind, are you able to tell us sort of the range of the clientele, the customers that you build for? Is it mostly for government, for police, or for diplomats, or the NGO market?
Of course, I can tell without giving names, of course. But this is the typical thing in our business. We do so many nice projects for very interesting clients, but you're not allowed to talk about. But you ask very nice. And no, I remember when I started, as I mentioned before, it was more civilian clients, cash and transit companies, taxi, or even transport companies. They want to protect their goods traveling through Europe, for example, or even central banks. They have to transport their goods protected. But then that's all right. There was a change to the government because I would say 80 to 90% of our clients are government or institutions, ministries, for example. Sometimes they are from foreign departments to protect their stuff in the embassies outside in the missions. Sometimes are how they call it, ministries for interior to protect their police forces. It doesn't matter if it's standard police, SWAT, or sometimes even then VIP protection, a very VIP protection. But even then again, it's for the ministries or for the governments. So private clients have quite few, but then there's companies. They protect special groups or persons. They need the protection. But the very normal civilian like you and me, that's not our clients.
Indeed. And there are export controls in relation to arms.
Of course.
You can't just go down the street to the local Toyota or Mercedes-Benz dealership and buy one, even though Mercedes do build their own armoured vehicles to Audi and BMW, but they're not available to the average person on the street. All right, so that's very interesting. And we know that governments, as you say, ministries of foreign affairs, interior ministries, banks, and other organisations, both for product as well as for personnel. Certainly the NGO market, the humanitarian market, which is still probably the largest volume market out there, given that their raison d'etre, if you would like, is to go into high threat areas of operation, to put people into harm's way, as we would say, and therefore to protect those people who are doing incredible work in the humanitarian field. So,
absolutely.
Another area that's of interest to us is how not only the market is developing, but the product is developing. As I said before, I remember in the olden days, people just cutting a piece of armoured steel, bolting it to the inside of the door and going, away you go. Whereas as we would say in the old, tickety-boo, it's great. And it's not great. We know that's not the way that it works. No. And you're talking about the overlaps as an important aspect of vehicle design. Again, a ballistic attack where a bullet will be fired at an angle rather than directly into a glass panel or the opaque armour, the steel, but at an angle. And therefore, there needs to be these overlaps to protect the passengers. So we've seen over the last 25 odd years the development of better design, better materials, as you say, harder, higher Brunel rated steel, so that's thinner, it's lighter. We're seeing, again, better design to protect occupants along the way. If you look forward now over the next, with your crystal ball, your protected crystal ball.
Yes.
If you could look forward in the next 10 years or so, how do you see some of the developments for the manufacturing and the materials being used in a civilian armoured vehicle?
From material side, I would say that you mentioned the steel and the glass. And for the steel, because in the last, from my experience, 43 years, was a slightly progress, not jumping for every year something new like in the IT business. It was maybe every 10 years some millimeters or half a millimeter thinner. In the glass there was a better fortune and progress. I remember when I started there was only glass solutions. Then in the case of attack, the splinters, you have all the splinters inside. Then they came the polycarbonate solutions, and they're still state of the art still. Much more lighter and thinner than 20, 25 years ago. There will be maybe a slight progress to get it even more thinner and lighter, even maybe in combination with transparent ceramics included in the glass. That could be happen maybe in the next 10, 15 years, step by step, but it will not reduce more than 50%, talking about some millimeters. And for the whole vehicles, we will all have to face out challenges with new technologies, if it's diesel or petrol engines, still preferred, or will it be electric or whatever in the future?
We're going to talk about that in a minute. Electric vehicles.
I make
That's
a joke.
A challenge.
I make a joke to my friends from the police forces or from others. When we have only electric cars here from the 2030s, maybe. I don't see it. Then you can recognize a police car, even hidden one or a camouflage, because you see the smoke from the exhaust, because the armored vehicles they are not 100% electric. Especially on the higher threat levels. That will be the biggest challenge. Myself, since 2 years, I'm driving a full electric car, not unarmored. Everything is working properly, but it's already 2.3 tons heavy. Only for 4 or 5 passengers. It's much more heavy than the cars before with a petrol or a diesel engine. So, especially for SUVs, we are talking about empty weight from 4.5 tons. It depends on the level of protection. An empty weight, a gross vehicle weight up to 6 tons, 5.8, 6 tons with petrol or diesel engines. So if we would have the same car with electric battery-driven engines, 2 or 3 engines, then we have minimum 750 to 1,000 kilo more carrying the batteries. And this I don't see at the moment. Not in the SUVs. and not in the light commercial vehicles. Trucks, maybe for central banks, that would be maybe, or some other reason, not for military, but that might be possible. Limousines, I think the one or the other competitor or a OEM started already. I think this will work. Of course, the batteries will be maybe smaller because they drive only shorter distances. Everything will work out. But as you mentioned, the engine somewhere in the field, in nowhere land, only battery driven with no, how do you call it, distance to drive.
And there's not many charges in the middle of Mali or Kenya. You can't go down the street and just plug an electric vehicle.
No, that will be the biggest challenge. Yeah. And I don't know how to solve it at the moment. I have no idea. Yeah. Even depending how the politics worldwide will manage if still cars with diesel petrol engines are allowed or not, if they forbid everything. So this is a big political game, and nobody can give the solution at the moment. I would say I don't have it at the moment. Even sometimes we have light commercial vehicles with battery package, and we do armoring more or less for cash and transit. But of course, the weight is a big problem. Yeah, we lose so much payload, for example, and then they have the driver license. Yeah, you need a special one because you're in a higher weight group and so on. That's not easy.
The other challenge obviously is out there is the battery, and the batteries used in vehicles. While stable, there is an issue of them catching fire, blowing up, and there's been plenty of examples around the world for that. And so the ability to protect the battery.
You have to protect as well.
So there's the aspect of the battery and its, I suppose, combustibility or explosibility. I don't know what the word is for that. And
same we do with the petrol tank.
Also, then if you're encasing the battery, we know this on a regular SUV that's up armored. If you're encasing the battery, and then you're in, with armored steel, and then in a high heat area, there will be an effect ultimately on the performance of the battery. And so
yes, absolutely. Yeah.
There's the balancing, again, the center of gravity issue. It's a great challenge. And absolutely. I would think that as time goes on, the very big haulage road trains, as we call them in Australia, the massive trucks hauling, massive amount of cargo. Now, the chances that that's going to go fully electric in the foreseeable future is fairly limited. And so I would imagine there's two aspects. One is I imagine there'll be exemptions along the way. The other part as well being that there is certainly in the likes of America and the likes of Australia, there is a bit of pushback by the consumers for electric vehicles. I think Europe is different, but the popularity of electric vehicles in Australia for the average man on the street has been waning. And so it's not a constant upward trajectory. And again, the nature of the areas that civilian armoured vehicles are operating, the nature of the terrain and the distances they're covering.
Absolutely.
It's just not the technology for it.
That's really the biggest challenge for all of us from the business. Yeah, what kind of base vehicles we will use in the future. Yeah, that will be the big miracle at the moment.
And the reality is, you're right. You started with the G-Wagon, and I remember in my early days, I'm going back, 20 odd years ago, and significant proportion of our fleet, the Australian government, was in fact the G-Wagons. And that phase out over time is now predominantly, I would imagine, is the Toyotas. And again, they provide some challenges, but Toyotas everywhere. You can get a Toyota base vehicle service, I would imagine, in almost any country in the world, given that Toyotas along the way. And so, that's going to be an ongoing challenge, as we've seen with the 300 series. The nature of the engine management system, there were issues in the beginning with braking systems and how it was affecting with the vehicle itself, the aluminium frame and the ability to carry the weight and how you're going to install the armoured steel. These are all ongoing challenges with the vehicles themselves along the way. But I have to say, let me ask you this.
Yes.
If there's one criticism that I think is universal for our clientele who procure, they manage, they operate the civilian armoured vehicles, is that of through life support, after sales servicing. And it's a great challenge between the armourer who has what we would call contractor modified parts, the upgraded brakes, the upgraded suspension, the hinges that are used, for example, the actuators to move the windows up and down, and then their own internal resources of, and I'm talking, let's say, for example, the NGOs or the diplomatic corps, who are not necessarily experts and having the personnel highly skilled in fleet management. So, that through life support is of critical importance to the
Absolutely.
where the majority of the vehicle cost is going to be over a 10-year period. Can you tell us about how your company rises to the challenge of being able to support vehicles in the field, whether it's downtown Germany, in Berlin or wherever, or in the back streets of Afghanistan?
Rob, a very good question. Again, thank you. This is even a very, very important point. And honestly, from our side, we offer always, to have, even in addition to the sold armored vehicle, kind of service, a maintenance contract, we always recommend it. But unfortunately, I think this everybody's challenging. There are only budgets for buying armored vehicles, and that's it. And they think it's just a normal car. And 5 years they have to go to the workshop and check the tire pressure and everything, but it isn't. And two examples, one good and a bad example. Once I sold some cars to a special market far away from Germany, and they even offered we would recommend service maintenance, spare part package, whatever, and even annual inspection. Even my person or my colleagues to check even before the warranty will finish if he can fix something or not necessary. Cars are perfect. And then by luck, I'm the country 5 years later. I think, let's go and visit the customer. How about the fake vehicles? And they're still running, but never one service, no nothing. Everything is maybe with tape fixed and whatever, and not replaced. The glass has cracks and whatever because of accidents, whatever. No maintenance ever. And of course, then we'll buy a new one in some years. But on the other hand, this is the worst example. But unfortunately, because there are no budgets in some clients, they don't have budgets, and this is a sad point. And on the other very positive example, I sold to one client 42 special armored Volkswagen Touareg in the level protection VR6. This time would be now VR7, the latest standards. And the customer was very smart and already asked for a 10 years maintenance contract. And even we with partners, local partners, we built together, or he built a workshop with our help and our parts and everything, our knowledge. And the cars still running after 18, 19 years. Ahmed in 24/7 police duty, 365 years a year, and still running. And the government just gifted these vehicles to another country because they are still not finished of the cars still working. But of course, this was expensive. Unfortunately, yes. The annual service, maintenance, spare parts, everything. But that's why the cars are 17, 18, 19 years running. So investment of the car is protected. Because even if you have a slight amount of money for service maintenance and spare parts, but you have a full armored car working 100%.
Indeed.
And that makes it so important.
Indeed. I think that's the point of the matter, that, to buy a vehicle today, 200, 250, 300,000 euros, whatever the case, depending on the fit out, the configuration, sure. But then again, the annual costs, both for preventative maintenance as well as general repairs and maintenance, it's a bespoke vehicle. It is a mechanical and electrical vehicle. And so it's going to break down. Things will happen. There's a mean time between failure of any item, and therefore it needs
to.
And so there's a function of the supply chain management, the preventive maintenance programming, the workshop in the field that is skilled and has the technology and the technical manuals in order to identify and repair the vehicle. There is that, as I said before, the supply chain management, so that the parts, it's such as simple as brake pads. Brake pads are in theatre, ready to be installed when they need to be replaced, rather than bring the vehicle to the workshop. Oh my gosh, we need new brake pads. Let's order. Well, now it's 3 months to get it shipped in. That's just crazy. But it's not actually that hard.
This is of life. This is of life, yeah.
And so it's important. We keep putting it to the client that if they would focus on that effort, that whole program, that what we would call through life support, then you'll find that the cost to maintain the vehicle is lower. As time goes on, and with the maturity of the system, the cost per kilometre to maintain the vehicle will actually get lower, not higher.
Of course.
And
of course.
And in fact, there's no.
And you still have 100%
see that
vehicle. Yeah.
But there seems to be a bit of a cultural impasse. I buy a vehicle and then we'll break. But particularly in the new reality of Trump version 2, where budgets are now exceptionally tight, there is, I think, more reflection and focus on how do we get more kilometres and more years for less euros. And I think that's key to it.
100%. I can agree and confirm. More and more clients in the past 5-7 years, or even 10 years even, they found out this would be very necessary and very important to do proper service and maintenance. And they have more and more budgets for the after sales, than only for purchase of vehicle. They found out already, and as more professional as better, from the client.
The challenge too, and we see this there's a countless number of hours that we spend with our clients, is that the nature of most of the organisations that would procure a civilian armoured vehicle, it's fairly much a pyramid, with the procurement office at the top, a few people, some regional offices that may take maybe Africa, Asia, Middle East, Europe, down to a country level, down to an operational level. And the level of knowledge as you get lower, and with great respect, but experience is telling me that it actually gets less and less. And we find when we talk to a driver or a fleet manager in the middle of Kenya or Cameroon or Colombia, and you say, this is an armoured vehicle, do you know the suspension system and why it's different, how we're going and how it has to be maintained? And there's a shrug of the shoulders going, I don't know. And so there is a great challenge for the organisation to bring the technical knowledge down that pyramid, to bring the supply chain and the pre-deployment of parts down that pyramid to a local level where it's needed, at the same time as having training to the workshop, so that you can have the best systems, the best preventive maintenance schedule. If you don't have a workshop that has personnel who are skilled and who are have the, so to speak, the ammunition of the equipment and the technical manuals to repair and maintain a vehicle, you've just spent 200,000-300,000 euros, and the vehicle is sitting there in a workshop, as you say, dead in the water. Well, that's just crazy. And we see it time and time again. And it's incumbent upon the organisation to do better. And, we are challenging And you are too as a manufacturer, challenging the procurement agency to say, you have to do better for your people, for the money that you're spending, and for the lives of the people who are travelling in the vehicles in these high threat areas. I think that's the great challenge over the next 5 to 10 years.
Absolutely correct. That's why I'm always offer even to train with my team at the workshop from the client. And we, always, for me, it's very interesting because I learn other people, very kind people, and very interested people in the workshops. And they are really hungry to learn more about the vehicles they are using. And we call it train the trainer. Yes. Of course, you cannot train during 1 or 2 weeks or 4 weeks. It depends, or even some months. The whole team of hundreds of workers in all workshops, whatever. But mainly, I love to do the train the trainer because then they can train their staff and the teammates. Yeah, and this works very properly. And even out of these trainings, some friendships resulted. Yeah, over many years. Yeah, and they know where to get the spare parts more faster.
Like I said, and look, it's interesting. You're talking about the spare parts. Let me ask your view of this. We have a number of clients, and I remember even when I was working for the Department of Foreign Affairs in Canberra, in Australia, and we would have a number of different up armourers and their vehicles, and we would have to buy glass individually from each of the various up armourers. And this is a great challenge because the cost to replace a windscreen is significant. I tried, in fact, 10 years ago, to suggest to the VSAC, which is about 10 nations, that when the Land Cruiser 300 was going to come out, and we knew it was going to happen, to then either entice or force the up armourers like yourselves or others to have a common design of a windscreen, whereby then there was a uniform windscreen that could be procured and was applicable across all the different up armourers' vehicles. Now, it didn't happen for a whole lot of reasons, but one of the criticisms from the clients is that the client has to buy a windscreen from yourself. They can't go to an AGP or a Tyneside or in the old days GKN or whatever. And this is challenging because, as we've had in the past, and that's a conversation we've had with Chris Hannon from Tyneside just recently, is that there'll be a glass manufacturer that goes out of business, like GKN did in Birmingham a number of years ago. Well, how do you then buy their glass, or how do you replace a glass from being built by an up armourer that used their glass that was certified by the likes of Besuchat for their glass, and now we have to have a different glass? What's your view of all of that?
Yes, it's a very good question again, Rob. As I like our conversation, because even for us as up armourer, we want always to reduce our risk as well. Yeah, it's a kind of business risk we want to reduce. That's why normally, if we have the chance and the possibilities and the manufacturers, especially for the glass, when we make the certification with the state houses with our certified vehicles, we try to use 2 glass manufacturers. So windscreen, for example, and all the left glasses are from A, supplier A, and rear screen and all the right side glasses are from the glass manufacturer B, to be on the safe side. And even, of course, we test the windscreen from A, from B, and some we mix it, everything, but so that we have one certification for the vehicle with 2 glass manufacturers. This is our.
Let me jump in. So you're saying that the windscreen, the left side is from glass company A, and the right is glass B.
Yes.
It means so that the windscreen, which tends to be the main piece of glass that is replaced, it was certified using glass from company A. Now, if you want to use a windscreen from glass B, how do you then work with the certification?
In addition, of course, before the state houses test the glass or make the certification, they want to have standard samples in a special curved glass. Doesn't matter if it's the normed glass shaped test sample for the test house that they want. Doesn't matter if ABC, they have all the same test windscreen. This is kind of a prototype or norm windscreen. Right. And of course, we will have tests even with the windscreen from B in the car. But certification one is for example with A, so you're on the safe side if one manufacturer stops production. Yeah? But it's challenging, but you have to make some tests even double. But my idea to have this perfect solution for companies or ministries with big fleets, for example, let's go to 300, or maybe for the upcoming 350 or 400 in 5 or 10 years. Yeah. If the client has maybe 200 or more Land Cruiser 400 in future, he should buy the design. Yeah. He should do the certification himself. Yeah. Okay. And then sourcing the production out to the manufacturers. Okay. Then he make an NDA with manufacturer Armourer A, B, C, D, E, and hands over the design, hands over the list of the parts, steel, glass, whatever, hinges, whatever. And the manufacturers, Armours like we and others, they make the production of the car. But the design is owned by the client.
There's a big challenge with that. There's correct. And, it's interesting. I've been down this track before. And in fact, I'm not sure if still currently, but of recent times, that is how the United States Department of State bought their vehicles. They were the owner of the design and what we used to call the design authority. So what you're saying
yes, correct.
The client, the procurement agency, whether it's a Department of Foreign Affairs, an NGO, they own the design. They are responsible for the design. They therefore do the engineering, they do the certification, the testing, and then they can subcontract the production of that
manufacturing
to any armourer that can meet that quality design. Terrific, not a problem. However, this then means that organisation takes full engineering and design responsibility, and the risk, should there be some degree of failure of materials, manufacturing, design, they take the risk rather than the armourer. Now, my experience certainly has been dealing with the variety of different foreign affairs ministries and NGOs is twofold. One is that they don't have the technical resources to be able to do the work to be a design authority. And secondly, is that their risk appetite is actually so narrow that they're okay.
Below zero.
I was trying to be diplomatic.
Below 0, I would.
It's diplomatic, exactly. To say they have no risk appetite. They want to transfer that risk entirely to, and it's logical because you are the engineering experts. You've been in this game 185 years, which, since the 60s and 70s doing armoured vehicles. So you have the technical knowledge, and therefore they rely upon your knowledge to be the design authority in order to then produce a vehicle that is fit for purpose. The challenge is, and there's no easy way around, is that when you go to
there would be a solution
with a glass manufacturer for a piece of glass for the windscreen, and then in 10 years or less, 5 years, 3 years, they change the manufacturing process. Same manufacturer, but different process to manufacture the glass. I will argue that certification is now no longer valid. Now, the question is, when you then certify with the likes of a Besuchamt or an IABG or whomever the test authority is, how do you then deal with this? And the answer at the moment is, we don't want to know, we can't deal with it, we don't understand. Well, we understand. It's a complex question. And in fact, at this year's Civilian Armoured Vehicle Forum, which I know your company is exhibiting, and we welcome your participation.
Absolutely.
And we have Tim Rennes as the chairman of VPAM, who will be presenting on the new So the updates of the VPAM organization,
Upcoming
particularly the issue of explosive blast testing, the ERV. And this will be one issue along the way. And I'm not sure he has the answer, but I know that this is a significant question in the minds of both the clientele, ours and other users, and the industry as a whole.
But there would be one solution if the government or the institution who wants to purchase kind of the big fleet for future, that they can outsource the design or the development to a company they trust and believe, and they buy the whole design and the whole development, and then buy it and then source us out to the manufacturers. Yeah, but this would be possible. But you're right, the willing to take over risk is below zero. This will be the problem, the final.
Okay, look, thank you for that. And look, I suppose in summing up, there are tremendous challenges in trying to make a standard passenger vehicle into a specifically engineered vehicle that can provide a degree, not absolute, but a degree of blast and ballistic protection to maintain mobility characteristics that will provide for a safe journey for the occupants, and to do it cost efficiently, to do it in a way that takes into account changing environmental factors, technology, changes in the components being used, and maintaining that independence of certification along the way. So I think that's a great challenge. All right. So as we wrap up, any final thoughts or comments you would like to make?
Yeah, you mentioned the IDEX forum in November, when I correct, yeah?
Yes.
I'm happy to join. Will be the second time. Even last year was our first, but I had heard about it even the years before, even this live testing and all the forums. Sadly, I visit too late, but not too late, of course. But I was really happy to be participating, and I'm happy to see you and all the others again, in Geneva. So it will be a great exhibition, a great forum, I'm sure. Yeah, and this is, I think, now the heart of the civilian armored vehicles is the pumping in Geneva.
Indeed.
Once every year, in November.
Indeed.
And I'm happy to join, and thank you for the organization. It's very interesting that you have found out there's interest in this kind of business, from all sides, from client side and from manufacturer side, from supplier side. So to combine it in a perfect forum, that makes really perfect sense.
Indeed, thank you. Yes, indeed. And look, it's unique. And like yourself, having been in this business 25 odd years, there was nowhere where people could share knowledge, share information, share challenges. And whilst the up-armourers are together, you're in the same business, but you've got similar challenges. And it's good that people share and people can learn. We are all here to protect people going into harm's way. And anything anyone can do to enhance that, I think is a wonderful thing. All right. Henrik, thank you so much for your time. I've really enjoyed our conversation. I think next time when we meet in Geneva, we'll do it over a cold beer or even a good Scottish whiskey, which is my choice of drink. So we'll enjoy that as we meet with everyone in the industry.
Thank you for the conversation from my side as well. Thank you so much. Yeah, take care.
Thanks indeed.